Dr. Bensong risked everything when he used the quantum leap accelerator to travel back in time. Now our team's working to find out why. As he leaps between bodies with no memory of who he is, he still has one hope: that his next leap takes him back to the...
Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Corman Productions, here to talk about Quantum Leap, Season 1, Episode 11, Paging Dr. Song. I'm doing this episode solo this week for reasons I will let Stacie explain herself later on. She is not feeling well, but did send me a brief recording of her thoughts, so as to still be participating in this week's look at the new episode. The episode's description reads as follows. Ben leaps into a medical resident in a Seattle hospital. As victims from a train crash pour into the ER, Addison reveals Ben's complicated mission. He must go against the hospital bosses to save lives and Alexandra's career. The episode was directed by Tessa Blake and written by Derek A. Hughes and Benjamin Robb. They seem to be a writing duo, as they are also responsible for Salvation or Bust and seem to have co-written more than a few projects together. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give me a listen. Secondly, if you are on one of the platforms that this podcast is now listenable, please hit me up with a follow. You can also head over to my YouTube channel, Corman Productions, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you are already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, as well as subscribing to my channel. Before getting into the episode itself, I have a couple of shout-outs. Ashley Wright on his new channel informed me that Corman Productions is currently leading his card series 4-2. I think I might actually be better at playing card games when I'm not actually playing them. Kelly M pointed out to me that in the last episode, the location that Janice and Jen met up at was actually mentioned in the episode. She told me that they were in Belize, which is a country in the Caribbean, which tracks because that looked exactly where they were. Neither me nor Stacie caught that last week. On a sadder note, Tony Rizal, father of a friend of mine of over 20 years, Tim Rizal, passed away at the age of 74 this Saturday. I didn't know about it until last night, but I knew him to be a good man. This is my way of paying tribute to the man. So my thoughts are with his family today. As I mentioned, Stacie is not with me today. And although there are certain ways to get around that through the wonders of technology, I'm sadly not at a point where I know how to pull that off. But she did record her thoughts, so here they are.
Hey Dave, hey Corman Productions, viewers and listeners, this is Stacie. I am letting you know that my household has come down with COVID, so Dave will not be coming over to record with me this week. I am feeling pretty caca, as Al would put it. So I just wanted to record a couple of quick notes, although I didn't actually take notes this week because, again, feeling pretty caca, but just a couple things to say, and then I'll let Dave take over and go through the play-by-play of this episode. The first thing I wanted to say is that cold open with our 10-second parking lot delivery was too much. It was way too easy, way too simple, no complications. What is this about? It has nothing to do with the episode. And I really think it was unnecessary. It was definitely unnecessary to put it into the trailers for this half of the season like it did. So, again, we've got some really silly things that were in those trailers. Maybe it's just all they had from what they'd recorded so far. I don't know. The next thing I wanted to mention is, actually last week I forgot to mention that in the last week's episode, we got a date, a very specific date of when Ben had leaped into, which is something I had been missing. It was great to see that come back. This week we got an interesting date. It wasn't a full date, but when we went to the present, it showed us 2023 Los Angeles, California. That is new. I don't think they have done that before. And that tells me one thing. It tells me that the dates are about to start getting more complicated, and I think we're going to start to see more timelines other than here is the past wherever Ben is, and here is the present day. I think we're going to start playing with the future and maybe even different variations of what would happen if Ben hadn't left, what's going on with Martinez. And I think the date is going to start becoming important, so they're going to start showing it to us more, and I cannot wait to dig into that. I only hope it doesn't become too complicated that we lose people, because unfortunately, audiences today have a hard time paying attention and following things when they get complicated, but I personally am totally here for it, and I'm excited at the prospect that this could be becoming a bigger story. So this episode, as we talked about last week, it is our medical drama episode, which is a place that I don't think Quantum Leap has really been before. And, I said last week it was probably going to remind me of House MD, which it does. It also could remind me of, say, The Good Doctor. Those are really the only two medical dramas I've watched, but you could probably insert any medical drama and, it's going to have that same tone to it. I'm wondering if NBC asked them to do this episode, because NBC, the bulk of their programming tends to be medical dramas and police procedurals, and I feel like this fits in really good with their audience, right? And that got me thinking. I was wondering, wouldn't it be fun if we took an episode of Quantum Leap and used it as a soft pilot for a new series? Not this episode, because I don't think we need another medical drama in the world, but some episode to introduce characters and a story that could become its own series. I think that could be super fun. I would love to see them try something like that. As far as this particular episode goes, as a medical drama, I think it was fine. It was a good story. I liked how all of the parts connected together, and Ben was able to save the lives of these people, kind of, sort of. I'm a little curious why this first-year intern was the best choice for Ben to leap into. It feels like there could have been somebody much better. I'm not going to sit here and try and analyze who. I do not have the brain capacity for that right this moment, but it makes me question, and I know we've questioned that before, like why this person is the host. Another point I wanted to make is that Addison seemed a lot more helpful of a hologram in this episode than we've seen in most of the other episodes. She was giving information. She seemed to have more knowledge than Ben of medical stuff. Ziggy was being helpful in giving her information quickly. We did see that 100% chance mentioned again. I don't like when they do that, but that's another point. I think Addison is really feeling her way around and becoming better at this. I absolutely saw some nods to Al in her character today, which I don't think I could ever say that in any of the past episodes, with her providing insights from her experiences, and she's whacking that hand leak, even though I hate that round hand link. I got a lot of little nice feelings where she was reminding me of Al and feeling like just a good hologram, and I really liked that. Again, at the end of the episode, we had Addison and Ben sitting on something together, which still bothers me. It doesn't make sense. She's sitting in the back of the ambulance. Her feet are on the tailgate. That's too much. Sorry, I don't like it. But really, that's about all I have to say about this episode. It looks like next week is going to be an explosive episode, so I will look forward to seeing that one, and I will let Dave go through this episode point by point and discuss it further. And then if I have any other points to what he has to say, we can always wrap back around this at another time. So thanks everybody for being here, and keep listening to Dave, and I will catch you guys later. Bye.
Well, this is me hoping for a speedy recovery for my longtime friends Adam and Stacie. As it turns out, Stacie will have plenty of time to recuperate, because according to the preview, the show is not going to come back until January 30th. And I gotta ask, why? This show just came back from a break, aired 2 episodes, and it's going on another break? This is the kind of thing that NBC has done in the past. Most recently with This Is Us, frequently having the show go on breaks, usually because of some kind of special And that was a tendency that happened to enrage fans quite frequently. I'm hoping this will not become a trend, as this is a new show, and it's a show that I would like to see continue for a long run, which if they keep doing this, is going to hurt the cause significantly. Stacie pointed out that the show had something in common with House MD and the other medical show that she frequently watches, The Good Doctor, which is actually made by the same people as House, as it turns out. It's a show that I gave up on because I just recognized too many of the same patterns as a House episode. Which makes sense because it's from the same people, but still there was too many similarities, and I just, after a while, stopped watching the show. This episode actually had a House reference. I'm not sure if it was intentional or not, but there was a musical cue in one scene in this episode that resembled something that also was played in House. There was one other reference that Stacie did not pick up on, likely because she didn't actually watch this show, and I did, was a reference to the show Scrubs, which was a comedy medical show starring Zach Braff, and had a character on there named Dr. Turk, which is the same name for a major guest star in this episode. The doctor was named also Dr. Turk, which that show, Scrubs, also aired on NBC, at least for most of its life. Eventually it went to ABC in the final couple of years. This show, for the most part, was pretty good. At certain points, I wasn't totally feeling it, but it came together emotionally as we tied the disparate threads together pretty well. At certain points in the episode, I was pretty much mentally comparing it to the mid-season finale, as it seemed to be telling almost too big of a story, but by the end, it came together pretty well, in my opinion. I was getting annoyed with the Janice scenes in this episode, which there weren't that many, actually, but I just got the feeling of treading water. And I sort of feel like that we need to get the story going a little bit faster. We need to start revealing more of the pieces and get an idea of generally where we're going here. We open with Ben leaping in, needing to deliver a baby in the parking lot as a black female intern. Alright, so I completely agree with Stacie's point here. This was way too easy and way too quick of a scene, and completely irrelevant to the rest of the episode. This easily could have been cut. Okay, so we're in the parking lot. Where exactly are we? In the parking lot of a hospital? Because if you're in the parking lot of a hospital, you have time to get to that hospital. Now, regardless of how the scene plays out, which was like, okay, 5 minutes and you're done, actual births take hours, if not days, to actually happen. So, yeah, this was not a realistic portrait of a birthing scene, but then again, in television movies, it never really is. We are in Seattle, Washington, 1994, which is funny because that's where my mom is currently living. Seattle, not 1994. As far as I know, she is not a time traveler. I will be later this year going to Seattle for the first time, sometime in March, to see my mom. So that's exciting news. Hopefully the show is not airing its final episode while I'm on that break, which is somewhat the reason for why I'm so annoyed with this 2-week break that we're suddenly taking here for no reason at all that I can tell. If anybody wants to shed some light on why this break is happening now, feel free. Ben looks at himself in the mirror and sees that he's a black woman, making this the second time Ben has both leaped into a black person and a woman. The ratio theory that Adam, Stacie's husband, is keeping track of in the original series is so far continuing in this series as well. The episode is pretty low-key about both. It doesn't really draw too much attention to the fact that Ben is a woman or a black woman, although it does occasionally do so in small little moments here and there. Addison is quick on the scene to tell him that he is Alexandra Thompson, a first-year medical resident. I joined Stacie in wondering if there wasn't someone better for the job, but there is no other obvious person presented in this episode. But then again, the creators and writers of the show very easily could have made one. While Ben fixes his bra that he's still not used to wearing, in comes Dr. Turk, what I assume is her ex-husband, or her soon-to-be ex-husband, to be more specific. It is not a pleasant conversation, and they are apparently in the middle of a custody battle. Dr. Turk is Alexander's mentor. and after getting off the phone, she urges him to leave as his shift ended an hour ago. She tells him that he can't save everyone. And that's a very apropos statement. She leaves, and Ben speculates that there must be someone in the hospital that he could save. Addison says there are actually 3 lives. Ben goes to a nurse to see if he can find out where those 3 patients are. That would be Kimberly Cole, Eli Jackson, and Louis Tan, but none of them are in the system. That's because they haven't arrived yet. But soon in come a bunch of train wreck survivors. Dr. Turk tells Ben that he should have left while he had the chance. We are introduced to Dr. Harper, who seems to be the boss. I recognized him immediately as actor Eugene Bird, who had 34 appearances as Dr. Clark on Bones. We see chaos all around, and we see Ben having a hard time with it all. I half expected him to faint, but he does not. And credits. After the credits, Dr. Harper yells at Ben to stop holding up the wall and to help somebody. Ben speculates to Addison that perhaps the patients he was looking for weren't in the system because they hadn't been admitted yet. Cripes. You two, you're supposed to be smart. I figured that out 3 hours ago. Okay, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but still. Addison gives that 100% chance from Ziggy that Stacie objected to, and that's something that frequently annoys her. As Ziggy says, there's a 100% chance that all 3 of the people that he was looking for were on that train. So, me and Stacie last week questioned if we had ever heard of Ben having a doctor degree, specifically a medical degree, if he'd ever gone to med school. We know he was smart, but we hadn't actually heard anything about him becoming an actual doctor, like Sam Beckett. As it turns out, Ben does not, in fact, have a medical degree. We were also questioning if he didn't have a medical degree, why would he be in this situation? And I think for the most part, the episode does a very good job of justifying that, because he's not called upon to make medical decisions. He's called upon to talk people into doing what he thinks is right, what he's there to convince them to do. He's not called on to actually have medical training. Though there are a few scenes here and there where Addison has to talk him through how to do a procedure, which is kind of on the unrealistic side, but I will live with it because I think for the most part, this was well done. So they happen upon a patient, and Ben ends up helping out Dr. Turk. Addison ends up assisting Ben in doing that. This is one of those instances where it's kind of unrealistic that Addison is able to talk Ben through a medical procedure, but whatever. This turns out to be Kimberly Cole, one of the patients Ben was looking for, something that the nurse, who is also helping out, is quick to note, and this develops into her calling him Nostradamus for the rest of the episode. Dr. Harper tells him to give her a medication that sounds like a gum one should be chewing, Asparadex, that becomes central to the episode's plot. Dr. Harper notices Dr. Turk's reaction and calls her out on it. Much too quickly for my taste. It's almost like an instant reaction. He says something and then instantly jumps on her for reacting badly. Hey, is there a problem here? That kind of comes down to the pacing of the episode, which is much too quick at times, which has been one of my consistent criticisms of this new series. It's not the only instance in this episode of this, and I will point out the second one when I get around to it. The patient is taken to the OR, and as Addison and Ben walks, Ben asks, what is the drug that the Dr. Harper was prescribing? It turns out to be a surgical anesthetic. Ben doesn't know what the meaning of that is exactly, but did note that Dr. Harper, or rather Dr. Turk, wasn't happy when it was prescribed. Addison says that the pharmaceutical companies would often sell experimental drugs to hospitals that seemed promising at the time, but turned out to have negative side effects. This hospital is one of the 5 hospitals that are currently giving Asparadex, or Asparadome, I don't even know at this point. I'm not very good at pronouncing medications. I think I've already done it a couple of times successfully. Asparadex? Yeah, whatever. Anyway, I'm going to move on. Ben is shocked that they would compromise patient care like that. Profits before patients. Well, Ben, I'm not shocked at all. That seems to be like standard operating procedure during the current day, never mind in 1994. Color me cynical about the whole healthcare system, and especially pharmaceutical companies. Addison comes back with, if Asparadex was dangerous, they didn't know it at the time. Is that you defending them, Addison? Because if so, that's a pretty piss-poor defense. Because it seems like they put this drug into the marketplace before finishing the trials. That is not acceptable. But it seems like pretty standard operating procedure nowadays, and like it's pretty common, and no, I don't think that's a good thing at all. Ben runs into Dr. Turk, who confirms that she is not happy with the prescription of Asparadex, listing off medications that she would have preferred. Conveniently so, because Ben asks for her chart and crosses off the bad drug and puts down one of the ones that Dr. Turk mentions. Dr. Turk says that if Dr. Harper finds out that he changed the script, he will nuke his career. And yet still, Dr. Turk laughs and walks away, after Ben simply shrugs. Dr. Turk is essentially Ben's boss here, right? She definitely outranks him. She's a doctor where Ben is currently in the body of an intern. So I don't know. I find this moment a tad iffy. I think if Dr. Turk was her boss, that she would make an effort to not let Ben do that, not to nuke his own career. And honestly, throughout the episode itself, it doesn't really seem like Dr. Turk is operating as Ben's boss, more like a friend, a colleague. And it seems like there is a power imbalance here that is not really demonstrated throughout the episode at all, really. I think that's one weakness of the episode. I don't think this relationship is totally realistic. Now, we could change this very easily by making Ben not an intern, but a full-fledged doctor. But maybe one who's lower tenured than Dr. Turk. We can still keep up the same dynamics here, just by making that one change. Ziggy says that there's an 85% chance if he gets caught, his host will lose her job. Ben says he better not get caught then. We cut to a title card which says 2023, Los Angeles, California. This is something that Stacie pointed out in her thoughts, that this hasn't really been done up to this point in the series. We haven't been like specifically told, okay, now we're in 2023 by title card. And Stacie suggests in her thoughts, which you already listened to, that that's because the plot of this series is about to get a lot more complicated. And I'm okay with that if it means we're actually going to like start telling the story rather than just trickling out pieces. To her point that some people aren't going to be able to follow that story, well, in my case, I probably won't be able to follow that story, but I will have Stacie, who's way smarter than me, to be able to explain the story to me. Alright, we have a Janice and Magic scene. Magic proposes that they work together because they want the same thing. She asks for trust, and Magic takes off the handcuffs. She will tell him what she knows only if Magic lets her talk to Ben. Now that's a tad challenging. I'm not sure it's impossible. I think it can be done. We haven't really gotten into the mechanics of how the whole hologram thing works, but Janice was able to talk to Ben before, so it's quite possible that she's already tuned into his brainwaves. They probably set it up for them before Ben took the leap. And I'm not sure if I'm Magic that I wouldn't let this happen, because he could very easily eavesdrop on the conversation. Now, at the same time, that conversation probably wouldn't reveal very much, because all Janice was going to say is, hey, look, stop talking. Don't trust these people. But we'll get to there in a moment. Anyway, back in the past, Ben is wandering past the nurse's desk, and she calls him over asking how he knew that Kimberly Cole was going to be on the train. Ben jokingly asks, would you believe that I could predict the future? She calls him Nostradamus and gives him a chart for the second of the three names, Eli Jackson. She tells him that maybe he can go over there and predict how he can help that patient. Eli Jackson was in the train crash, and on top of that, he has a brain tumor. Unlucky dude. Or, if you buy Ben's logic, it's actually a good thing he was in the train crash, because now they found the tumor in time. He's played by Stan Shaw, who is another person I recognize instantly as a boxer who took a dive for money In Snake Eyes, a Nicolas Cage movie that is a rather guilty pleasure of mine, Ben says he needs to get treatment for it, but Jackson isn't interested in fighting. He has no one, which is when by coincidence Dr. Turk happens in. She happens to be his daughter. They have an estranged relationship, and Jackson doesn't want her to know about the tumor. In the original timeline, the tumor metastasized and he died. And then we find Dr. Turk attending to another patient. And Ben finds out that this person is Louis Tan, the third person, and he has a piece of train sticking out of his head. Oh, that is no bueno. Ben handles this better than I, as I would have just vomited and fainted at the same time. It really would have been quite embarrassing. So thankfully, I am not this guy's doctor. You know, there was a long time ago, a customer happened into Dunkin'. He was a regular customer, and he would frequently tell me that I should be a doctor instead of, serving coffee. Well, given the fact that I can't stand the sight of blood and would be completely useless in high-stress situations, which is what a lot of medical situations are, I'm not sure that makes a lot of sense for me. Anyway, moving along. In the original history, Turk nicked an artery while trying to remove the thing from his head, and he died. Ben's job is to keep him talking and distracted. His wife is missing, and they bond over the love of their lives. Ben saying he met his fiancée at work too, which is news to Dr. Turk. She ends up giving him a strange look, probably because his host doesn't have a fiancée, and she definitely did not meet him at work. Anyway, Ben keeps him talking and calm, and Dr. Turk successfully pulls out the object and does not kill him. 1 life saved, 2 more to go. One which needs to be convinced that he has a reason to live at all. Addison says, fortunately, his reason to live works at the hospital. We have a scene between Janice and Jen. Jen is trying to give her alcohol as a peace offering. Maybe she's also trying to get her drunk, so she'll talk more. Jen ends up bringing up the leaper that Ben encountered, Martinez, which disturbs Janice. Janice implies that there is an order of events that needs to unfold, but she won't elaborate, but suggests there is a person she will talk to. In the past, Ben is researching something bemoaning the lack of high-speed internet. When Dr. Turk wanders in and figures he's got a patient with a brain tumor, he asks for advice. She simply tells him to send the patient to oncology, but Ben asks, what if he won't go? Well, then you make him. You convince him to do so. You're the doctor, and the patient's life is in your hands, and it's your job to convince him to do what is the best for him. It's your job to convince him to do what's in his best interests. Ben fishes for details on what happened between her and her dad. Apparently, he was a corporate lawyer defending the evil corporations against chemical spills, sexual harassment charges, so on and so forth. And yes, there's that, but also the fact that he, while vigorously defending them, really didn't spend too much time with the family. And she became a doctor to basically go against this example, to do good for people. But I kind of hate to break it to Dr. Turk, because she is unwittingly assisting one of these evil corporations in the form of a pharmaceutical company. She doesn't think reconciling is going to happen in this lifetime. They get paged by Dr. Harper, who then just finds them in this room. He found out what Ben has done. Doesn't know who did it, though. Ben immediately takes credit for changing the medication order. Ben defends his actions by saying that there have been studies that show that Aspiritex has terrible side effects on those with underlying conditions. Dr. Harper knows of these studies, but the drug is about to be FDA approved, and Kimberly doesn't have a pre-existing condition. Au contraire, Addison tells Ben that she does have an underlying condition. He has something muscular dystrophy. Dr. Harper doesn't see that on the chart, because, as Ben points out, it's undiagnosed. And Dr. Harper yells at him saying, "Are you a psychic or are you a doctor? Why can't both be true?" I would totally watch a series about a psychic and a doctor, so I think that they're onto something here. Dr. Harper asks Dr. Turk if he agrees with Chicken Little that the sky is falling, and Dr. Turk fails to stand up for Ben at all, contributing to evil in a less direct way than her father, by failing to stand up to them, because she's worried about the impact it'll have on her career. Ben, of course, loses this fight, and Dr. Harper implies that this will have a negative impact on her career, going as far as to call her and Ben Missy. Dr. Harper leaves, and Dr. Harper is mad that he would use such patronizing terms to refer to Ben. What a sexist bastard. And while I'm listening to her, I'm also basically thinking, well, you didn't stick up for him whatsoever. I mean, you are the senior doctor here. You should be the one making these arguments. You should be sticking up for the intern Ben. But she totally did not do that. She does not come off well here, and her explanation doesn't really do her any favors. Dr. Harper and the board are in the pockets of the corporations, so what can they do about it? Her solution is to do nothing and let evil win. And she's better than her father here. How? Now, I get why she does this. Really, I do. And I'm not saying that I would do any better than her in the same situation. I mean, I'm not exactly, I wouldn't call myself brave, that's for sure. Really, the reason she doesn't want to do this, doesn't want to stick up for what she feels is right here, is because she doesn't want to lose her job while she's in the middle of a bloody custody battle over her son. It's all very human, but hypocritical at the same time, which in itself is also very human. But it gets worse. Asparadex, or whatever, will cause the death of hundreds of people, and Ben must stop this, according to Addison. No pressure there, Ben. Ben thinks that the solution is to fix Jackson's relationship with his daughter. Jackson is meanwhile packing up to leave because he thinks that dying from cancer is karmic justice, even though he doesn't really believe in karma, though he goes on to describe exactly what karma is. So he kind of does believe in karma, even if he isn't going to call it karma. Ben thinks that maybe Jackson has a chance to do some good, to reverse some of the damage he's done in the universe. Ben suggests, in a very moving speech, that he can use his legal advice to stop the use of the drug. But this never factors into the plot at all, so this is kind of pointless. Addison tells Ben that Louis Tan's wife is brain dead, and no one is around to tell him, so he has to. Ben says that he bonded with him over the mutual loves of their lives, and now he has to go in there and destroy him. While we hear the song played that I was talking about earlier, that played at the end of House MD Season 3, Episode 3, Informed Consent. We see the scene with Louis and Ben play out with the song over it. We don't hear the dialogue. We just see Louis react with heartbreak, and this is a beautifully done scene. Ben finds Dr. Turk and says, "Great news! I just talked to your dad and got him to agree to take up the fight against the hospital to stop the use of asparadex." She does not seem as happy as Ben would think that she is. And I don't know, that's quite a bombshell to just drop on somebody. I don't see how Ben thought that would work. Ben says that given the history, it might be a great way to heal the wounds. Okay, just come right out and say it, Ben. Jeez, Ben, could you try for a little subtlety here? Some wounds don't heal, according to Dr. Turk. And once again, I should say that this does not factor into the plot at all. This whole thing with Jackson taking up the fight is not a thing that actually happens in this episode. It doesn't factor into the resolution. So what are we doing here? I guess we could say that this is a misguided way of Ben to try to patch up this relationship. But I don't know. I kind of think that Ben is a little bit more artful than this in prior episodes. He's usually a little bit better than this sledgehammer routine that he's trying to attempt here. As they talk, they get a code blue, which, by the way, is not good. It turns out to be Kimberly, who is having a bad reaction to this asparadex, or at least that's the theory that Ben comes up with, and he turns out to be right. They manage to stabilize her, with Addison's help, guiding Ben along, but the news still isn't good. Her heart is seriously damaged, and she needs a new one. Dr. Turk tells Ben that she doesn't know what psychic hotline Ben is tuned into, or how he knew about the underlying condition that Kimberly Cole has. But she knows there's something Ben knows that she should tell him if they were really friends. So Ben tells her about her father's tumor. In reaction, she goes into doctor mode, describing his chances, but her father is refusing treatment because he doesn't have any hope, and there's only one person that can give it back to him. You have a scene between Jen and Magic that we really don't even describe what we're talking about here. We don't even know what the topic of conversation that they're having is. They're talking around what Janice's request actually is. But it is interesting that Magic says that Janice should have been part of the project, especially everything that's been going on. Magic says that they have to roll the die and take the chances and perhaps trust Janice. And okay, sure thing. I totally agree with you. Or at least I would if I knew what the heck you were even talking about. What the subject of debate even is. What are we arguing for or against? I'm not sure. In the past, we have a scene with Ben and Addison. And Ben has gotten to a point where he's really frustrated and starting to feel the pressure of saving 3 people's lives. Addison pep talks him, which gives him an idea, which is to talk to Louis Tan into donating his wife's heart to save Kimberly Cole. It's a very Houseian solution, but without Hugh Laurie around to be House, insulting his way into getting what he wanted. Instead, Ben uses his compassion into talking Louis into saving this life. But there's a problem. Dr. Harper is going to do the surgery, and he's going to use Asparadex again, which means she's going to die. And according to Ziggy, her odds of surviving have plummeted. Ben goes to find Dr. Turk, who is standing outside of her father's room like a creeper, and tells her what's about to happen, that he needs her one more time to save one more life. And he doesn't even really tell Dr. Turk what the heck is going on, at least not here. But Dr. Turk agrees to help anyway. In the OR, Dr. Turk is prepping for surgery. This is intercut with Ben and Dr. Turk running down the halls, trying to get to the surgery. They get there in just the nick of time before the Asparadex is injected. Dr. Turk finally stands up for what she believes in, and initially Dr. Harper isn't moved. He says that they don't know the politics and that they need the sponsorship. But Ben and Dr. Turk make a compelling case with evidence that if he gives her the drug, she's going to die. And Dr. Harper makes the right call. And Ben has earned Dr. Harper's respect, as evidenced by the fact that Dr. Harper calls him a doctor. The nurse calls Ben Nostradamus one more time and says, "Nice catch." They leave the OR. Addison tells him that the next morning, Dr. Harper will convince the board to no longer participate in the trial. Ben thanks both Addison and Dr. Turk for having his back. And she, in turn, Dr. Turk specifically, in turn thanks Ben for having her back, even when she didn't want it, or thought she didn't. Dr. Turk will mend things with her father, and she will talk him into getting treatment. She already has an OR booked. She just has to get his stubborn ass there. And that is the last that we will see of Dr. Turk for this episode, probably for the series as well. I don't think that these events will be revisited in any kind of way. We have the scene with Ben and Addison sitting in the ambulance that Stacie objected to, specifically them sitting together for the second episode in a row, which is not how holograms work. She points out that Ben doesn't seem happy for a guy who saved hundreds of lives. It's because he's worried that when the moment comes to save Addison, he's going to fail, that he's going to choke. She tells him first that she's capable of saving herself, but given the impact that he has had on the 3 lives, convincing a husband to donate his wife's heart and having him come to peace with the fact that she did not in fact die in vain, giving another person a chance at more life and all the amazing things that she could do with a new heart, and finally patching together a father and daughter relationship and giving that man hope. Given all the things that Ben was able to do in this one leap, Addison knows that she will not be alone. Regardless of what happens, when things finally happen, she will not be alone. She will have Ben. Ben will be there at that moment. Addison is not afraid, and neither should Ben be. They lean in for a kiss, which of course was never going to happen. But even before they get to the point where they're touching lips, Ben leaps. And the person that Janice wanted to talk to, which we see in the future, or present day, as it turns out, is Addison herself. She wants her to convince Ben to stop trusting anybody, Not even Addison. This is another instance of someone talking and not giving the other person a chance to respond. Addison asks a bunch of questions and then says, "Why am I here if you're not going to answer these questions?" But, of course, she's not giving Janice any chance to reply. I mean, she wasn't going to, but that's besides the point. That's another thing when I'm complaining about the pacing, in that this doesn't happen in a natural kind of way. We reinforce the fact that Ben went to Janice, not the other way around, but she also basically says that she was not affiliated with Martinez, that someone else will send him, and their intentions probably aren't good, and maybe the speculation that he's part of the Evil Weeper project are true. She implies that Ben talking and revealing what he knows might help their enemies. We pan down from Addison to see the table and her reflection in it. Not sure what the point of that directorial choice was. I don't think it really added anything to it. We see Ben leap, and standing right next to him is Robert Picardo. Stacie should recognize him from Stargate, whereas I know him best as the Doctor on Star Trek Voyager. He's a highly ranked military officer, and apparently they are there seeing a nuclear power plant. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the episode. The preview suggests that we might be getting more of a sci-fi plot than we ever did in the original series. A groundhog scenario. Something in the vein of Groundhog Day, or Star Trek The Next Generation's Cause and Effect. Of course, we'll have to wait 2 weeks to find out what exactly this is going to be. I've already said my piece on that one. That's all I got for you for today's episode, and we would love to hear from you. So if you have any comments on this podcast or the episode in general, feel free to leave us a comment. If you like this video and want to support the channel, there's a number of ways you can do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Corman Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Corman Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee, which is a new way to support content creators such as myself. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to my channel.